Bible. Thank you. Well, it's good to see you all today. Many are the plans of a man's heart, but it is the Lord who brings it to pass. Things haven't gone exactly according to plan today. A hole in the tire as I was talking, so came a little bit later than I expected. Anyway, today we are in the book of Exodus. But before we do that, a tiny bit of review. Don't worry, I won't make it quite as long as last time. You remember Abraham. Abraham, the patriarch, the one who God called his friend. He called him his friend. He approved of him because Abraham trusted God. He believed him, and therefore God called him righteous. He counted him as righteous. And God told him, he said, one day your descendants are going to become strangers in a foreign land, and they will be mistreated there and be enslaved for 400 years. And after that time, I'm going to save them out of that land. Well, this is a long time before it happened that he told him this. It was a sure thing, certain thing that God promised him, and then he would take them out of that land and bring them to the land that he had promised to Abraham, and then to his son Isaac, and then to his son's son Jacob and their descendants. And so that happened. Just like he'd said, they ended up in the land. You know how he got there? It started with a famine, right? They sold their brother into slavery, and he ended up being the one who saved them. The very one who had been mistreated, sent into slavery by his brothers, sold for 20 pieces of silver, was the one who ended up saving his brothers. But then, after he died, the king of Egypt, who they called Pharaoh in their language, the king of Egypt disregarded or forgot, probably intentionally, all the good that Joseph had done for the land. The very reason that the king was so powerful and so rich was because Joseph had done that for them. But he forgot, and he began to feel threatened by the people of Israel, the descendants of Jacob. And so he decided to weaken them through slavery. And that didn't work. That didn't work because God was still on their side. God doesn't forget his promises. He still was faithful. The people of Israel probably began to forget. They began perhaps to become more accustomed to the gods of Egypt. And so they were mistreated, and the king came up with a plan. Because they were still not becoming weaker, they were still continuing to increase in number. He came up with a plan to kill all the boys that were born among the Israelites. And that they began to do. So they were throwing the baby boys that were born among the Israelites, throwing them into the river to be eaten by crocodiles or drowned. And then there was a boy born among the Israelites. His name, well, we find out later, was Moses. He wasn't named right away. And his mother tried to hide him, and it wasn't working after a while, so she hid him in a basket. And we know what happened there. He was adopted by the princess in Egypt. And then, because she had taken him out of the river in the basket, floating on the side of the river, taken him out of the river, then he was called out of the river in their language, which is the name, and it was a very common name at that time, the name Moses. And Moses, once he grew up, he knew that he was an Israelite of their descendants. And he tried to save his people. He knew that he was chosen by God to save the people, but he thought he was going to do it by his own strength, he'd grown up in a palace. He'd learned all the arts of war and all the other arts and writing and reading. He was well trained as a prince. He thought he was going to save the people by his strength, but it didn't work, right? When he went and told off some of his own countrymen who were fighting, told them not to fight. They're countrymen. They said, "Who died and made you king?" Well, not in so many words, but they said, "Who made you king, judge over us?" They rejected him, just like Joseph was rejected by his own people, his own brothers. Moses was also rejected at that time by his own countrymen. And when the king found out about it, he was forced to flee, run away, and he ended up in the desert, tending what ended up being his father-in-law's sheep. 40 years. He was 40 years when he left Egypt. He was 40 years in the desert when God called him. The burning bush. God called him, "Moses, go and tell the king, let my people go." Well, this time Moses wasn't so self-confident, was he? He had been humbled by this experience. He'd learned that he could not do it, and now the trouble was he was still looking at himself. "I can't do it." Yes, that's right, Moses. That's right. You can't do it. I've been in so many situations in the Philippines, working there. I was not a doctor. I had a little bit of training as in health and medicine, but I was not a doctor. I ended up sewing up people, giving them medicines, and doing all sorts of things that I hadn't been trained as a doctor to do. Major wounds and people with with leprosy and other things. And those things were not common in America, and those things were definitely not things that I had learned to treat. But the Lord gives you, when he tells you to do something, he also gives you the abilities or what you need to do it. So Moses had to learn that it was God doing it, not he. Not he. He wasn't going to be doing it by his own power. He came up with a lot of excuses. God wasn't having any of it. No, go. So he ended up going. And he went to the king, and he said, but God had told him, the king is not going to listen to you. His heart is going to be hard. He's not going to listen to you, and I am going to end up showing my power through him. I'm going to let the world know about me through him. Then they're going to learn who I am. And so when he got there, sure enough, he went to the king. He said, the God of the Hebrews, Yahweh is his name. He tells you, let my people go. And the king said, who's Yahweh? I don't know Yahweh. I don't know your God. Well, certainly he didn't. The gods of Egypt, they were many, thousands and thousands. Frog god, the fish god, the sun god, the moon god, the many, many different kinds of gods. So he didn't know Yahweh. He didn't know the real God. He was going to get an introduction, a very rude awakening. I'm not going to let your people go. I'm the one in charge here. I'm the king. I decide who comes and who stays and who goes. Again, not an exact translation here, but he wanted to be the one to decide. Well, God showed a few signs, but he still wasn't listening. You know now the stories. Remember? The river god, the fish god. God was going to show them who is boss here. Who is the one who controls all of nature? Who is the real, true God? So the first thing he did was, not literally, but sort of kill their gods. Show them who is boss. Their river, that thing that they worshipped, their river god, turned to blood. And all the fish in the river died. The king couldn't do anything about it. He was also reckoned to be a descendant of the gods. He is boss. He's a demigod. Well, he still wasn't listening. Then there was the frog. The frogs came up out of the river, and the king didn't know what to do with them. He couldn't do anything about it. And so he tried to trick Moses, said, okay, fine, you can go. Well, I would be kind of grossed out too, I suppose, and the ladies even more so. Frogs in their beds, frogs in their pots, frogs everywhere in the whole land. I mean, maybe the French would eat a few frog legs there, but after a while, they would probably get a little tired of it too. And no, you can go then, fine, you can go. Just pray to your God, take care of the frogs. And then God did it. He took care of the frogs. They all died. They piled them up in heaps. Mountains of dead frogs, and the land reeked of them. Another god dead, right? The frog god. And then he said, no. When he saw that the problem was gone, no, you can't go. So he is still trying to decide. He's still trying to pull the strings. He's trying to say, I am the one in charge. Now, don't we try to do that sometimes too? try to bargain with God, try to make decisions without him. So he tried. That failed. Then God sent another plague. Gnats. Oh, gnats. Terrible. Terrible. Have you ever been in a place with gnats? I've been in some of the, during the summer here, in where the groves of trees are. Sometimes they get really bad gnats. Try to have a picnic. It's real bad. Well, this was a much worse. It was like clouds of gnats, and the people couldn't do anything for the gnats. And the magicians, they tried to copy what God had done, and they said, no, this is the hand of God. God has done this. But the king still wasn't listening. He kept trying to bargain. He kept trying to fool God. So, still, he wasn't listening. And then God sent another plague. This time, what was it? Can you see it? That number 4? Now it was flies. Hordes and hordes of flies. Oh my goodness, I've been in places like that where there's so many flies you can't eat, you can't think, you're swatting all over the place. And fine, you can go, but only your men. No, all of us have to go. Still, he's trying to have some semblance of control over his nature, over nature and over the situation, right? Nope. And then it was their cattle. And God had said, I'm going to show that there's a difference between the people that I have chosen, the Israelite people and the people of Egypt. I'm going to show you that there's a difference. None of the cattle of the Israelites will be bothered. And all the cattle of the Egyptians died, all. And the king sent out his scouts, his people, to check it out, and he found out it was exactly as God said. The parts of the country are not far apart from one another, but in Goshen, where the Israelites were, nothing happened. It was fine. Well, the king was still not listening. So then there were boils. And then after that, there was a storm, a huge hailstorm and lightning and thunder and everything. And it destroyed all their crops. And everything that was outside, including people. They got warning. They were told, this is when it's going to happen, and this is what's going to happen. Anyone who listens, bring your people in. Bring your cattle in. Otherwise, they're going to die. And sure enough, that it happened exactly as God said. Then there were grasshoppers, locusts. And the locusts came and they destroyed everything that was growing on the branches of the trees, on the fruit, the new crops that had not been destroyed by the original, the other plague. Because the hail had destroyed the crops too. Now there are new crops, probably months in between in this case. And the locusts came and ate everything. There were no crops left. The people of Egypt were in a big trouble. They could not expect to have any crops that year. And the king was still not listening. He kept trying to fool God. He kept trying to do different things. But God had said, I'm going to show him. I'm going to introduce myself to the world. And they're going to know who's God. Remember, one of their big gods, the sun god, Ra, Osiris, their big god, God said, I'm going to send darkness over their land. For 3 days and 3 nights, there's going to be darkness. And it will be so dark that they won't even see their hands in front of their faces. That's what he did. But in the land of Goshen, part of Egypt, just neighboring territory, there was a line. Bright, normal day, and the sun and the stars and moon at night. Just normal. On the other side, so dark they couldn't even see their hands right in front of their faces. And the Egyptians couldn't do anything for 3 days. Nothing. And the king got angry this time. He said, Moses, you had better not come back in here. If you come back in here, you will die. Moses said, fine. Have it your way. I'm not going to come back in here. And you're going to see. That was 9 plagues. There's one more to come. God said, I'm going to show them one more wonder, one more amazing thing. And when I do this thing, the king will be forced. He won't have any choice. He will be forced to let the people of Israel go. And this is what you're going to do. When this happens, you are to beg all of your neighbors, for expensive items. The people of Israel had been slaves for hundreds of years. Nothing did they have. And the Egyptians were rich. Now the poor are going to become rich and the rich are going to become poor. And the people of Israel are going to be well paid for all their labor. And God said, this is what you are going to do, because I'm going to send a plague on the firstborn of all the Egyptians, all of them, all of the firstborn. I am a firstborn. I'm the oldest son. All the firstborn in Egypt, from the slave to the son of the king, who is supposed to be the next king, all will die. So this is what you are going to do. Take a lamb. Take a lamb that is 1 year old, male, perfect. No blots or blemishes, nothing imperfect in it. It has to be perfect. A perfect lamb, 1 year old, and watch it for 2 weeks. Watch it. Make sure. No sicknesses, no broken bones, no nothing. Perfect. Watch it for 2 weeks. And at the end of those 2 weeks, on a certain day, I am going to enter the land. And on that day, in the evening, you are to slaughter those lambs and take the blood from those lambs and paint it with actually a certain kind of branch. This is a hyssop branch. It's actually used for cleansing in the temple later on. A certain kind of the hyssop branch. Dip it in the blood and paint the sides of your doorways with it. And whenever I see, when I come, I send my angel to kill all of the firstborn. When I see a doorway to a house that has the blood on it, then I will stand over that house and not let my angel come in there. So the people of Israel had learned to trust God. They learned that when God said something, he meant it. He was going to do that thing. So, during that night, the people of Israel had taken their lambs, and they were supposed to slaughter them, put the blood on the doorways, and they were not to break any of the bones in it. They were supposed to roast it whole and eat all of it, and they were also to have bread without any yeast in it, and because they're not going to have any time to knead it and everything else. They're going to be rushed out of the country after this happens. So they did all that. In the middle of the night, they started to hear it. Crying and wailing. All the people of Egypt, all of their households. There was not one household where someone wasn't dead. In the whole country. Even the son of the king, the heir to the throne. The heir to the throne, he was to be the next king. Dead. All dead. Weeping and wailing loud throughout the night. But in the land of Goshen, where the people of Israel were. God had stood over those doorways of those houses with the blood on it. God stood over them. The lambs had died instead of those people. They were safe. They were safe because of the blood of the lambs. The Egyptians, there was wailing. They'd had fair warning. They were told exactly what would happen. There's the king's son, dead in the arms of the mother. And the king called Moses in. Oh, I thought Moses was ordered not to ever come into the king's presence again, right? He was going to die. Now it's the king's son. A descendant of the gods could not save his own son. No one was safe except those who had the blood of the lamb on their doorposts. They were safe. The king said, Moses, go out now and bless me. The king at that moment was humbled. He had to bow the knee. He had to surrender to God. He had to acknowledge that God was the one in control at that moment. And so the people of Israel did just as God had said. Take the dough that you have in your baskets, take all your things, ask from your neighbors all of these articles of gold and silver and costly clothing and stuff, everything like that, and go. And the people of Egypt were now afraid at this moment. They were so afraid. They said, "Go, please, quickly, because otherwise we'll all die." Yes, anything. Take anything you want and go. And they went. The people of Israel left rich because of God. God actually had a plan for those things, those costly things that they brought. But we're going to be learning about those things a bit later. God had a plan for those things. But they left rich. They were saved by the power of God. The strongest army in the world, an empire of many generations, humbled, the richest land, humbled, brought to their knees. They learned. And not only the people of Israel, not only the people of Egypt, but all the lands around them, they heard the story about how God had saved them in their hour of need, in their helplessness. Saved them by his own power. It was certainly not Moses. It was no cleverness of their own. It wasn't even, we'll learn later, it wasn't even because they were such a good people. It wasn't because God had promised. It was because God had promised. God promised Abraham, this is what's going to happen, and it's a sure thing. When God made that promise, if you remember, he made a covenant with Abraham. He told him, take a bunch of animals and split them, cut them in half, and lay them out there, except for the birds. The birds he didn't split in half. But lay them out there, and I'm going to do something. I'm going to make a promise with you. And so on that night, when he made that promise, do you think it was God and Abraham that walked between those halves? No, God came showing himself as this pot of fire and passed between those halves of the God by himself. This meant that it didn't depend on Abraham. God was certainly going to do it. On that night, he said, this is what's going to happen. They're going to become foreigners and enslaved, and I will save them by my own power. And that's what God did. Over 400 years later, 430 years. And God said at that time to the people of Israel, he said, you are to remember this time. Remember this. And make it a custom. Make it a feast for your people so that they will always remember how I saved you. You are going to be a special people. You're going to be a special people, my people, and you will remember the way I saved you and made you into a nation, brought you out of the land of Egypt by my own power. Remember it. And do this every year, taking a lamb. A perfect lamb, taking the blood, eating the bread without yeast, and actually there were some spices and wine. Spices, bitter herbs. Not spices really, but bitter herbs. And they were to eat the bitter herbs as a reminder of the time that they were in bitter slavery. Those difficult times that they had. And they were eat to eat the bread without yeast, because at that time when they left Egypt, they were hurried out by the people of Egypt that were so afraid of being the next to die. They would be hurried. So because of their hurriedness, because they were in such a rush, they didn't have time to knead it. You know how it is for you bread bakers. Who of you like to make bread? You know that it takes a little while for that to rise the first and second time. If you're in a rush, you have to do it without yeast, right? And so that's what they did. That's why every year they remembered that. To this day, they remember the Passover. God is faithful. And it is a good thing to remember. Remember the good things that he has done for us. Remember that he is faithful. Remember that he alone is the one who works salvation for those who put their trust in him. This is a fun lesson to teach. We're going to come back to this because that thing about the blood of the Lamb, that's going to come back to us a number of times. It is such a good picture of God's plan for salvation. That's all for today. A little shorter, thankfully. Oh yes, let's pray before we go. O eternal God, you who created the heavens and the earth, by your power you created them. By your power you brought the people out of Egypt when they were helpless, defenseless, crying in their need. You came to their aid because you are a faithful God. It is good to know you. When we are in our times of need, we know that you are a faithful God who is always near. In Jesus' name.